All right, let's talk about the high-stakes world of global energy. China has a massive problem. Its economy is incredibly thirsty for oil, but its traditional suppliers are looking more and more unstable. And right on cue, a new player has stepped up, offering what looks like a perfect solution. But is this new lifeline the real deal? Or is it just a drop in a very, very large bucket? Let's dig in.
So just imagine for a second you're China. You're this absolute economic giant. Everything, your factories, your cities, your military, it all runs on oil. And then suddenly, that critical flow of oil is in jeopardy. That's the situation we're looking at today.
But you know, when there's a crisis, there's always an opportunity. And thousands of miles away, a country starts to see its chance. It begins quietly ramping up its crude oil exports, sending them across the ocean to fill that looming gap.
Now, if you're thinking of one of the usual suspects in the oil game, like a big Middle Eastern producer, you might want to think again. The country stepping up to the plate here is Brazil.
That's right, Brazil. And on the surface, this looks like a match made in heaven. Brazil seems like the perfect emergency supplier for China. And for a while, the numbers even seem to back it up, showing this huge surge in oil flowing from South America to Asia. And it's really interesting to see just how good a fit it seems to be. Brazil has some of the best stuff. We're talking high-quality, low-sulfur crude oil that's also less carbon-intensive. On top of that, it's already the world's 9th largest exporter, and its production capacity is just growing and growing. It sounds pretty perfect, right?
And this quote from the Brazilian Petroleum Institute just sums up the sales pitch perfectly. Brazil is marketing itself as the super stable, reliable partner, totally removed from all the chaos and conflict you see in other oil regions. It's basically the no-drama option.
But, and you knew there was a but coming, as good as all that sounds, when you actually start to crunch the numbers and look at the logistics, well, the story starts to fall apart a little. This is where that simple, neat solution collides with a much more complex reality. And that brings us to the single most important question in this whole thing. Can South America really step in and replace the Middle East as China's main source of oil? This chart tells you pretty much everything you need to know. Look at that. A massive 52% of China's oil comes from the Middle East, and all of South America combined, just 12%. The gap between what China needs and what South America can provide is just enormous. So here's the crucial point. Let's imagine a total fantasy scenario where Brazil sends every single barrel of oil it exports directly to China, cutting off all its other customers. Even then, it would only replace about 15 to 20% of the oil China gets from the Gulf. That's helpful for sure, but it's not even close to a real replacement. And then you just have the problem of distance. A tanker sailing from Brazil to China takes over a month to get there. From the Persian Gulf, it's less than half that time. And that's not just a simple delay. It means more cost, more risk, and it ties up the world's tanker fleet for way longer. And it's not like Brazil is the only one in this game. The market for China's business is incredibly crowded. You've got competitors all across the Atlantic. We're talking Nigeria, the big up-and-comer Guyana, and others. They are all fighting for a piece of that pie. This just makes the whole situation even more complicated. But honestly, beyond the numbers and the long shipping routes, there is an even bigger problem lurking. This isn't just a simple business deal between two countries. No, this is a high-stakes geopolitical game, and there's a third, very powerful player watching from the sidelines.
See, when you make a big move on the global energy chessboard, people notice. And a country like Brazil suddenly pivoting its oil exports to China? Well, that is definitely the kind of move that gets a lot of attention from other world powers.
And that other player is, of course, the United States. You can bet that any major deepening of the energy relationship between Brazil and China is being watched very, very closely in Washington. So what does watching really mean? Well, for Brazil, it could mean serious trouble. It could lead to diplomatic friction, new kinds of trade pressure. Washington has all sorts of ways to make business difficult, sometimes with actions that feel like sanctions without actually being called sanctions. And just like that, a simple oil deal turns into a massive geopolitical gamble for Brazil. So when you put all of these pieces together, the flawed math, the tricky logistics, and this huge geopolitical risk, the conclusion becomes pretty clear. The source material puts it bluntly. The idea that South America can just step in and replace the Middle East for China, it's a fantasy. And that brings us to our final takeaway. Brazil is an important piece of the global energy puzzle, no doubt. Its oil can be a really helpful supplement for China, especially in a crisis. But a strategic substitute for the sheer scale and convenience of the Middle East? Not a chance. Which leaves us with a really tough question. Just how much geopolitical risk is Brazil willing to take on for a customer it can never truly satisfy?